it's creating sort of societal and political difficulties.
We are attending more and more new players providing new solutions.
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I guess at first sight this may look like an energy panel inside a cyber summit, but in reality I believe it is exactly where the conversation belongs. For a long time energy was treated as a background condition of technological progress, something available, everybody had it, it was there. Basically it was only a cost line or a climate constraint, but I think this assumption today no longer holds. Energy is becoming a strategic asset. It is both a critical infrastructure that must be protected, but it's also an enabling infrastructure without which other strategic systems cannot operate. And we're talking of artificial intelligence, of course, cloud computing, data center, connectivity, defense system, very important, and cyber capabilities. Put simply, without reliable energy, there is no digital sovereignty. Without abundant and affordable electricity, there is no AI leadership. And we'll discuss this today. The question, I guess, is not only whether energy is clean, cheap, or available at the moment, it's whether it's sovereign, resilient, reliable, and secure enough to sustain societies and economies under pressure. And there is a second, perhaps even more strategic question. If energy becomes a bottleneck rather than abundant constant, what happens to innovation, competitiveness, and sovereignty? So to discuss this, I have today with me three speakers with very complementary perspective. First, I would like to introduce Adam Lee, who is Vice President and Chief Security Officer at Dominion Energy. So he brings the operational perspective of a major energy operator, someone who deals not with abstract infrastructure, but with a real asset, real grid, real threats also, a real crisis scenario, and the daily convergence between physical security, cyber risks, and national resilience. On top of this, I know you've been for, I think, 25 years at the FBI, which will also bring us a lot of perspective on the topic. Our second speaker will be Felix Barrio, who is the Director General of INCIBE, with the Spain National Security Institute. He brings the perspective of a national cyber security agency, our state organized trust, preparedness, coordination, and cyber resilience across critical sectors, including energy, and before even a crisis materializes. And finally, we have Antoine Eutin, Senior Executive Allemande, a French cyber security agency, where he works at the intersection of cyber, defense, and public offices. He also plays a key role in French and European cyber ecosystem through the Alliance pour la confiance numérique and the Pôle Excellence Cyber. Thank you for being there. So today we'll try to structure our discussion around two poles. First, energy as a critical infrastructure, how we protect energy systems for cyber, physical, geopolitical, and hybrid threats. And second, energy as an enabling infrastructure of technological power. Our energy availability, reliability, and cost increasingly determine where innovation happens, where industry locates, and who can sustain strategic technologies at scale. I will ask a few questions to start the discussion, but if you can actually debate between yourself, that'll give me less work, and that's where I excel when I have nothing to do. It's where I'm best. Thank you. So if I start with the first team, which is energy as critical infrastructure, resilience, sovereignty, and security. Energy infrastructure is no longer just power plants, grids, pipeline, or a substation. It is increasingly digitalized, connected, optimized by software, dependent on data also, sensor, industrial control system, and operational technologies. That creates efficiency, but it also creates a lot of exposure. A cyber incident affecting energy is not only a cyber incident, it can quickly become a national crisis with impact on physical, economic, social, and national security event. Put it simple, if the power goes down, we cannot do anything else. We don't have communication, we don't have hospitals, we don't have payment, and we don't have military readiness, which in our time is something we crave. So if I start with you, Adam. From the perspective of a major energy operator, I understand that Dominion is about to become the largest utility in the world. Congratulations, I'm a bit jealous, I have to say. How should we think about the convergence between physical security, cyber risks, and national security when protecting energy infrastructure? And if I also push a little bit my question, should we treat you energy operators really like private utilities, or in practice have you not become the frontline actors of national security and technological sovereignty?
Well,
yeah, you have to put it on 0.
had it backwards. Well, first, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Intrepid last session, and you're the Intrepid audience. So thank you for your sticking with us. So great question. In the United States, we consider infrastructure, critical infrastructure, 16 sectors across transportation, education, healthcare. Energy is the only one of the 16 that all other 15 depend on. So I would say energy infrastructure is the most critical of critical infrastructure. And for the purposes of this conference, for sure, there's an entirely new perspective emerging in what historically have been sort of, the regulated utilities in the United States, where as long as it was cheap and as long as it was reliable, everyone kind of liked their power company. So the power companies were flat-footed when it came to security risk, relying heavily on the compliance schemes that regulated them. I think in the last 15, 20 years, there's been an awakening that we are the upstream target of critical national assets from the military installations that not only do we serve, but we also service. So we provide energy and we service the energy within bases across the United States. But, the notion of the Pentagon's energy, CIA headquarters energy, the naval shipyard in Norfolk, which is the largest naval shipyard in the world, those are our customers at Dominion Energy. Dominion Energy is, I think we were number 6 prior to the merger that's underway today. And within that set of the largest utilities, we serve more of those critical national assets than any of the rest. So for us, investment in security and the way we look at security and the way we think about security is not reliant on the compliance schemes that government imposes on us. For us, really, that's just an audit exercise, because we are so far past that. We have 7 nuclear reactors across 4 sites in the Mid-Atlantic and up in the northeast of the United States. We're building the largest offshore wind project in the hemisphere. We have inverter-based resources spread out across the United States, which are commercial assets for us. And then we are the utility, all the way down to the ratepayers and the meters for now 3.5 million ratepayers, which is about a population of about 8 million people. So it's a big problem set, but even that doesn't define the threat and the risk more appropriately stated, that we're moving into with our large load customers, which are the data centers, hyperscalers in Virginia. So there are more data centers in Virginia, our large load customers, than anywhere else in the world. They're clustered in a little area, largely Loudoun County, which became famous because of the number of data centers. But people think because we serve the National Capital Region that our largest customer would be the U.S. government. It's not. It's a 3-letter private company that starts with A, AWS. So that's, when you're thinking about the need for energy security and energy resilience, for right now, meeting the need of those customers is the name of the game, which for us is capital expenditure to grow transmission capabilities at a pace that we never even really imagined. Our company is about 130 years old. It took us 130 years to get here in terms of our generation capacity of 27 gigawatts. It's going to take 15 years for us to double that. To put that into perspective of what the capital projects necessary to accomplish that doubling of capacity in just a few short years, it's an enormous challenge. And in that, we're building everything these days secure by design, which means we're incorporating security strategy in things that historically were driven by the speed of business. And we have to client service our businesses with that in mind. We cannot be a speed bump. We cannot be an obstacle. We have to be a partner with the businesses to build drone surveillance systems that automate and we operate remotely, which we pursued waivers from the US government to do that. So now we have drones pre-positioned across our infrastructure that we operate from the Richmond Airport, where Dominion Energy has a remote operations center. We have shot detection, we have fence line detection, we have all of the things that go well beyond the compliance schemes. But those physical security safeguards are designed to protect the systems that make and move energy, because that's what our greatest threat is. And converging physical and security very quickly, building a risk register to comprehend the security risk to all of that, you have to think about the things that are most critical to keeping the lights on within your service territory. And for us, that is the operational technology systems that make and move energy. It's been interesting in these conversations, safeguarding OT environments in terms of the investments we've made. Not only is Dominion Virginia's service provider for energy, but we also have the most expansive telecommunications network in Virginia for the sole purpose of keeping our OT systems out of the commercial telecom. So it's a dark fiber network that runs our OT environments, and essentially as close as we can get to that term air gap, it air gaps those systems. Our IT environments, we don't want attacks on our IT environments, but when it comes to the movement of that D needle on the NYSE, an attack or a ransomware attack on IT, a volumetric attack on our IT will be a nuisance and a problem. But as long as those lights are on and we don't have anyone who shouldn't be in our OT environments, we will be just fine as a company, the health of our company. Good news is we have heavy investments in IT security as well, so we haven't suffered very many of those. But when it comes to, I'll finish on this, when it comes to the convergence of that security and the criticality of that security, we are the largest Dragos customer in the world. Those of you that are familiar with Dragos, it's an operational technology monitoring system that is state-of-the-art with the right use cases for identifying risks to resilience, human-made and naturally made. But the threat center that we've built to manage all of that considers everything from insider threat, and we can get into that later, the sort of more pedestrian security threats of theft of our copper and all of that kind of stuff, and attacks on our network, all in the same environment by analysts and operators that are thinking about all the risks across our enterprise.
Thank you. So resilience is the key, basically. No, thank you. Very interesting. Felix, I would like to bring you in immediately after Adam's answer. From a government perspective, how do you avoid putting too much of that burden on operator alone? I guess it is systemic. If something goes wrong in the energy system, the consequence propagate into almost every other sector. And we heard from Adam that basically, at least in their environment, they are very, very independent and they're protecting themselves and they're carrying that burden. I'm sure in Europe it's a little bit different. We are expecting all of us to be much more protected and supported by a government entity. So my question is what makes energy infrastructure different in your environment from other critical infrastructure in terms of systemic cyber risk or any other threat?
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to share with you some of the many lessons learned that we acquired when past 28 April 2025, Spain suffered the most catastrophic blackout of our history. And we had the opportunity to test in our own skin how important it is to be ready for this is not a simulation case. So of these lessons learned, let me focus what important is to balance this increasing dependence that we have from energy for the normal life, for our economies, for our societies. But reciprocally, we are attending a sophisticated system of energy supply that depends more than ever from digitalization. And in energy sector, we can find how this complexity have acquired different levels and how this demands from the public administration strategies that combine not only the traditional focus on critical infrastructures protection, but also this complexity management from the point of view of the business continuity of a network that is so big. Let me share with you some data from our blackout. When we detected the first effects of the blackout at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, immediately we discovered that this network has several suspecting activities. First of all, everybody was concerned about if it was some kind of cyber attack. Immediately in internet, people was calling us as national cert for critical infrastructures and private sector. Well, who was? Where is the Russian guy? Well, luckily, we have early warning systems that allow us immediately in less than 20 minutes discard the cyber attack purpose because we launched just 8 months before a specific ISAC platform, an information sharing center tool for energy operators. And thanks to the ISAC platform, we had the opportunity from the minute one to talk with CISOs of energy operators to discard that there is no suspicious movement in all assets in digital space. Secondly, we had a very fluent cooperation with our cybersecurity agency of neighbors. France, of course, with ANSI, but of course, Portuguese Agency of Cybersecurity, but of course, Moroccan Cybersecurity Agency. At the first moment, they shared with us that they didn't detect anything related to cyber attack. Well, the second step was, well, if there is no cyber attack symptoms, what is happening and how we have to manage this? Well, first of all, this is a cyber incident. There is no cyber attack, but it's a digital problem of not availability of assets, digitals in our system already. So we have to manage an incident as any cyber incident. So the second step is to mitigate and to help to recover the normal activity to different operators. In one hand, we have, in this case, 35 critical operators, but in the second level, we had to manage 135,000 operators and the lowest level in the producers of energy. This is amazing. Of course, Spain is one of the world champions of renewable energy producers, but this means that we have thousands, hundreds of thousands of solar and wind energy farmers all around the country, one of the biggest countries of Europe, operating and in a panic moment where you have to address immediately systems of data support with all the lack of channels of communications due to the lack of energy, and you have to deploy all these systems. Luckily, in less than 5 hours, we get the normalization of the system. This is a successful case for us, but we have learned that we have to deploy different levels of cyber exercises, ISAC tools in different grades for different agents that involve not only the big operators at critical infrastructure sector, but also all the supply chain, where is the lack of the support more evident, because we are talking about different governance frameworks of their digital assets. We are working about different supply chains systems independently, where you are talking about a neighborhood that is having some kind of solar panels on the roofs, and they have purchasing digital SCADA for manage all this production, but they lack of a framework of governance, and they are not complied to because they have no regulation at that level. But it's important to design new systems that require all this complexity. And this is a reflection that we have to transfer to other sectors, other critical sectors that at this moment are in the same way, the increasing number of dependence of digitalization challenges.
If I can stay on that topic for 1 minute and have a follow-up question, what did in operation and effectively did you change? Because it's been 2 years now, almost.
1 year and...
Yeah, 1.5, right? And so what did concretely, what did you change in, I mean, as a country, not only in Sibe, but as a country that would make it better today as a response? Or
yeah, we carried on 2 different audit reports, one from the side of the Spanish government and other from the European Union level. And both have agreed about the importance to reform the governance system. There was a problem of digital governance. We have to reinforce the public resources, investing in a new generation of digital systems, starting with the SCADA level, and in, establishing some kind of new ways of compliance for the supply chains. It's very important to involve, because all the dependence of the systemic systems requires to involve in some way until the last producer of this 155,000 system. Okay.
Well, thank you. It's a very, very interesting topic, and you guys suffered a very traumatic incident, but all of us can learn from it. So thank you for this, Antoine. Let me bring the cybersecurity industry perspective in this discussion. Energy infrastructure is often, as I said before, grids, plant, pipeline, but also software and technology, sensors, or a cloud. So from a cybersecurity and trusted technology partner view, when do you see, or where do you see blind spot in the protection of energy infrastructures?
First of all, I'd say that to go back to the example you mentioned earlier, I was called by probably 3 to 4, 5 newspapers, even from the Washington Post, say, like, can you tell us if it's a cyber attack in Spain? Let's be cautious, because Spain was not the only country to suffer from such a blackout. When I lived in Australia, South Australia had suffered from a similar blackout a couple of years earlier. But even though it has, the source of the blackout was not a cyber attack, it still demonstrates a vulnerability and could give some ideas to attackants or opponents. I'd say we need to, the complexity is that we need to combine both the, I'd say the historical way we developed energy resources and the energy system, with nuclear plants, main infrastructure, which are still developing. We're developing nuclear programs in Europe, etc. And if we go back to 2010, Adam may have in mind the attack of Stuxnet against the Iranian nuclear facilities, which demonstrate the capability to target operational systems. So that's, and I'll go back to the risk that target, or in my views, that are especially targeting those infrastructure. At the same time, we've got additional and new challenges which comes with the renewable transition. Transition toward a far more digital and distributed architecture with renewable energy sources, with battery storage systems, with EV, electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, with microgrids, etc. It's a very more distributed and flexible energy systems, and it becomes more complex to address the cybersecurity challenges. First of all, because it's fragmented. So in terms of governance, it's much less easier to ensure compliance with any type of regulatory framework. I'll go back to that in a second. When it's no longer, your state company, and when you've got a wide range of companies which create this integrated system. Then we've got the convergence, you said it, between IT systems and operating systems, which are harder to keep. It's harder to keep them fully separated in order to avoid, sort of a distributed threat across the system. Then we also have more integrated systems between our own countries. And once again, the example of the blackout in Spain, it had some impacts and results as well in the south of France. So it means it requires more cross-border collaborations around policies and governance. When it comes to the convergence of IT and OT operations, there are two sides or two stories to be told. The first one is technical, you mentioned it. The other one is in terms of skills. If you have a look at the panel of skills of skilled people, of experts in France or anywhere in terms of OT operations, it's much harder for us to find specialist experts. We even have to develop these own skills internally through our training programs. And I said this is a real challenge. We also have the supply chain security issue with what is being called more and more a TPRM, third-party risk management, and where we put our trust, who we decide to trust. Let's imagine, and a few days after the event in Spain, we heard in some medias, I think it was in northern countries or in the US, that some undocumented communication technology had been found in Chinese solar panel. And we know the trend or the threat of pre-positioning, especially from China or Russia. We could imagine that such a crisis could be triggered, controlled from overseas, because we deploy systems which are not controlled. So, for instance, I believe that if we want to continue deploying such panels or wind farms, etc., from China or countries we don't really trust, we should test and control with the panel to select such systems and control them, ensure, or try to ensure they can't be controlled from Beijing.
Certify them, right?
Exactly. And we have developed, this leads me to the, thank you for the transition. This leads me to the, we didn't prepare that, but thank you, to the regulatory framework. As you said, it's the same in France. We've got a strong and dedicated regulatory framework around critical infrastructure, which encompasses the energy sector. For instance, if as a cybersecurity specialist, if we want to audit perform an audit with the critical infrastructure, we need to be qualified by ANSI. So we need to get a stamp from the National Cybersecurity Authority, which says this is a trusted company, both in terms of skills, abilities, in terms of the scope and the processes they follow to audit, and also in terms of trust nationwide. This is true for audits, for consulting services. They also have developed what we call qualification scheme for SOX operation, for CERT operations, and I think this needs to be extended and shared on at least the European level, as we are fully integrated. And also, I would like to see a stronger, strong policies in terms of certifications of those materials or equipments, not only on a voluntary basis, but also as to control what has been implemented. And of course, the last, I won't go back or repeat what has been said all the day around AI, but AI needs to be considered as a new threat. I don't know if most of you have heard of the quantum threat. I think we also need to make a lot of efforts, and it can come through regulation to prepare the quantum revolution, even if it's in 10 to 15 years' time that those quantum computing capabilities will be industrialized. But we've got a trend called harvest now, decrypt later today. So some of the attackants, they collect information that could have some value, passwords, whatever, in 10 years. We need to accelerate the transition towards post-quantum cryptography, which is not a technical breakthrough. This is something that already exists, which can prevent failures in the coming years. Those are some threats, among others, but...
No, I think it makes a lot of sense, yes. A few as you said. I think we're really talking about broader security architecture here, physical assets, operational technologies, supply chain crisis coordination, and that takes us to the second topic, which is energy can not only as something to protect, but also as an enabling infrastructure for technological power, basically. AI, cloud computing, we said it earlier. It requires a massive volume of reliable electricity, and I insist on the topic reliable and predictable electricity also. It's also required predictability. Companies do not invest billions in data center, chips manufacturing, or industrial platform if they are not confident that energy will be available, reliable, and competitively priced on the long run. And also I'll insist on the long run, because we have in Europe at least we have a very short-sighted strategy around energy pricing. So if I start with you again, Alan, to have the operational perspective, the growth of this demand, large, concentrated, urgent, and highly reliability sensitive, is energy availability becoming a binding constraint on technological innovation? And what should technology company understand better about the physical realities of power generation, transmission grid, and reliability?
Well, I think, I don't know if the European press picked up our merger as much as the American press did, but the driver behind the two most strategically placed and the two most focused on capital project expansion, the two companies in the United States doing that, Dominion Energy and NextEra Energy, the narrative behind that business deal, and this is not a business class, but was precisely to meet that over-the-horizon need of electricity supply. It's almost difficult to imagine the scope and scale of transmission capital projects to accommodate what's coming. We're doing it now in Virginia, but it's creating sort of societal and political difficulties, because it's very difficult for ratepayers to see this very conspicuous expansion of transmission infrastructure in their neighborhoods or traversing their neighborhoods and say, who's paying for that? Are we paying for that? But it needs to happen. And we in the United States prefer the private sector to do that. So the company, assuming closure, and I think everyone is assuming closure of the deal between NextEra and Dominion, will create, again, the largest electric energy company in the world and the third largest energy company overall in the United States behind ExxonMobil and Chevron. So this will be the most muscled up effort to supply the energy necessary for this coming, or this present and future digital transformation and electrification transformation. So we are doing that strategically in the United States with the support of government. And I did want to touch on that piece because this is a security conference, not a business conference. But our partnership with government in our sector, and perhaps even in commercial space generally in the United States, is singular, but I think it's a signal of what's coming for large critical infrastructure companies like ours. We have a relationship, again, we're the power company of the Pentagon, right? So we have a relationship with the Department of War in the US that is real-time, deep, and meaningful. It's beyond just the communication collaboration rubric we've been talking about at the conference. We have a detailee each year rotating through from the United States Marine Corps Cyber Warfare Group that sits in our SOC, paid for by the US government, working shoulder to shoulder with cybersecurity technologists that are protecting the grid. So the learning curve for the military from that experience not only enables their defensive understanding, but it enables offensive understanding as well. We have a persistent presence in our SOC with the Department of Homeland Security. So they have a virtual access to all the logs through our Palo Alto and the other mechanisms of logging that are on the OT side, where they can run IOCs at the TS level, top secret level, government holdings against those logs, and all general counsel approved, right? We've had to wrangle a little bit with how they can do that, but we landed in a place where they are able to real-time identify hostile nation-state actors trying to penetrate. And again, the situation for Dominion Energy, outer perimeter of our network gets hit about 3 billion times a month with automated tools scanning us, and so orders of magnitude greater than the second place in our industry. But again, it's signaling what's coming for everyone because we are the upstream provider for everything else. So DHS persistent presence, official documented information change relationship with the FBI, the National Security Agency scanning the outer perimeter of our network, looking for vulnerabilities to work with us in partnership to close those. So again, that is what the public-private partnership should look like, in my view. I was in the FBI's cyber division back in the Stone Ages of 2005, and I remember one of the very hardest things is we were building and I'm a lawyer, I'm not a technologist, but we were trying to build a national strategy and a framework for engagement with the private sector back then at the FBI, and it was virtually impossible because even companies in critical infrastructure wanted nothing to do with sharing their vulnerabilities with government. I'm sure all imagining the caricature of the FBI standing at a podium, taking credit for whatever mitigations they enabled, but at the end of the day, I think, and no better evidence of the essential nature of those relationships than the Colonial Pipeline attack. If anyone caught that attack on IT environments that implicated OT, OT was shut down on one of our largest pipelines in the United States for oil and gas, and it created a supply chain havoc in the southeast of the United States. And that woke up all of the industrial companies, all the critical infrastructure companies, that they really needed to have a real-time engagement with government to be smart on what the threats are so they could close those gaps and protect their companies. So we had already started that process. We have accelerated that, as so many have after the Colonial attack. But I think we are, and I know it's interesting speaking to folks trying to achieve security posture in Europe that is resembling the United States, and it's interesting that government is sort of seen as a solution. I think the partnership needs to be private sector enabling government to protect all of critical infrastructure.
Well, that's very interesting. Strategic, almost in defense and critical. I also take note that you are increasing production to, what, 55 gigawatt in the next 10 years?
Yes.
Or it's secret that I should not read.
Well, I'll just say the market capitalization of the combined company upon close will be over $200 billion. So
yeah, that sounds like it. So anyway, and I just note that in Europe we're still talking of sobriety and reducing our energy consumption. I think we're having it backwards. Anyway, we're a bit late, but let's continue this passionating discussion. And I have my next question for Felix again. Europe speaks a lot about digital sovereignty, AI sovereignty, cybersecurity sovereignty, but can those ambitions be credible without an equally explicit energy sovereignty strategy? I was just saying that we are even not talking of producing more, we are talking of punishing our users by increasing the price so they consume less. So how should Europe connect cybersecurity policy, industrial policy and energy strategy more effectively to actually build a stronger case?
I mentioned before that the case of energy sector is a very good experiment for other sectors. Let me point out that 100% of all the energy operators involved in the normal functioning of the system are private. So we have to take in consideration that any kind of cybersecurity strategy or resilience strategy is based on the private initiative. And this involves also their own policies about supply chains, and it's very difficult also, in terms of complexity, the traceability of the origin of technology that is present at this moment in all this ecosystem. Of course, the question of the sovereignty of the technology, digital technology, and this is something like to talk about Chinese solutions that represents a very important percentage of the SCADAs, for example, in terms of energy operators. So we have to spend more attention how to require, in terms of compliance, all these different profiles of private actors, because it's completely different what we can expect from these grid operators, critical level, that all this complexity of fragmented supply chains that requires thousands and thousands of people that is purchasing technology in the market without any kind of guideline or supervision of control. And let me put in connect this with something that Matthew pointed out previously. It's the question of the emerging technologies. We are not talking about vulnerabilities of known producers or digital solutions that we know very well. We have in our organization the Vulnerabilities Laboratory for Energy since 2012. And we have identified an inventory of solutions, but we are attending more and more new players providing new solutions, and it's not necessary only to think about when we have something similar to quantum computing, but now with the artificial intelligence, we are assisting a new generation of providers, of solutions, and this represents changes every week in terms of energy storage, in energy managing, in terms of SCADA, but also any kind of product is changing day by day because we are accelerating at this moment the supply chain market. So we have to be ready for manage this complexity. And my main worry at this moment is that there is no solutions from the point of view of human-centric strategy, because we have to incorporate automation, digitalization in the origin of all the risks that we are managing. There is no other option, because our own blackout, we have to think for a moment that all the actions in this system represents nanoseconds. We have to react immediately, massively, with no doubts and proportionally to the necessary actions that requires every point of the system. So we have to incorporate something that is changing every day with all these new challenges that really we don't know where is the moment, what is the priority. So we have to reflect on that.
Okay, no, very interesting. I actually have a lot of more questions, by the way, but including for Antoine. But maybe we can take a question for the public, so I'm not the only one asking my questions. Sebastian, I think you have a question. You want my mic?
Crazy man, he gave me the mic.
Test. There we go. Hello, I'm also Sebastian, the other Sebastian, but from Bucharest, the little Paris. My question for the panelists would be, what would be your best advice for governments to develop more energy ISACs within their national territories? Because we see that in Europe, we do not have many of them. We are trying now to develop one in Romania that deals with energy. What would be, I don't know, your best advice that you've seen that is working in your member states or in other countries like outside Europe? Thank you very much.
So, Adam, Felix, Antoine?
I can, well, you guys share the mic. The ISACs in the U.S. are invaluable. They're essential, but they're not necessarily essential for sort of the threat intelligence sharing that is at the tactical level, at least what we found. By the time we get it from the ISAC, it's way too late. If you don't have it from organic sharing, or you don't have it from a subscription from your Mandiant or whoever you're receiving your threat intelligence from, God help you if you're waiting for an ISAC to do that. But the ISAC does sort of give you an understanding of the threat picture that you wouldn't otherwise have. It does give you sort of a community understanding among the different, in my case, utility companies. We have them for financial services and all the other sectors. But just know what an ISAC is. Very, very good for a strategic understanding. It's very, very good for the sort of information sharing. I mean, it's in the title, so that's kind of what you'd expect. But don't think you're going to build an ISAC necessarily that's going to give the threat intelligence for mitigation response. That's not what they do well, anyway, my experience.
I would not add. I don't have anything to add. I would say exactly the same. We share the same position, but just maybe to add. Or Sebastian, you had a question.
If I ask my question, you won't be allowed to say what you need to say.
All right. Because I just wanted to emphasize on something we did not mention yet is the topic of human vulnerabilities, which has become a topic that really needs to be addressed by companies themselves. Make sure that we can identify what leaks exist on the dark web or whatever, or anticipate the risk linked to insider threats, which is becoming something. There is nothing easier than clicking by accident on a phishing link, even if you were paid by 20,000 euros in Bitcoin during your trip in Asia or whatever. So I'd complete really the technical or governance dimension by the necessity to address human vulnerabilities. And I'd also like to, I could not agree more, Adam. And I thought in the US you were better than us, at least in France, and not too sure in Europe, on the necessity to work together, the private sector, the industry, together with the public sector, sometimes, and if you followed some announcement in France around the national cybersecurity strategy, the politics, or with a top-down approach, draft their own strategy, policies, whatever. But really, there is a real need for collaboration with the private sector, in particular to address both the systemic challenge that is in front of us now with the fragmented ecosystem that you described, and the pace, the rhythm of changes. And we've got a bit more flexibility in the private sector to achieve that. Yeah, that was an additional comment to the previous discussion. Sorry.
So thank you. I think we've reached the end of our allotted time, so I will cut Sebastian's. Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion.